The Gordon Knot by Alan Graham. Heart racing. I get up from the cluttered restaurant table and quickly yet calmly walk over to the till. I smile awkwardly at the head waiter and ask to pay half the bill for table 12. Then I'm struck by the sudden thought that this isn't my best strategy here, and so I abruptly amend my request. The whole bill. I blurt out, "Please, can I pay for what we both ordered?" Before you get too carried away into thinking that my motives here are charitable, I should probably confess that I'm not being entirely selfless in wanting to pay the whole bill. Office gossip. That's what I'm worried about. How the all-entangling network of whisperers will react on Monday when it learns of my actions. It would get around the place pretty fast that I had waited until the moment that Gordon from accounts had disappeared to the loo before abandoning our date. To the sensible folk in the office, I feel I can easily justify my actions. I mean, the date has been terrible. And none of the catastrophe can be remotely considered to be my fault. For starters, I made the effort and I look amazing. Classy, like the restaurant, and sexy, like the Saturday night. Plus, had I been allowed to get much of a word in, my conversation would have been sparkling. So I can see exactly how I am going to play this when describing events to the office. I will focus on the facts. That Gordon from accounts arrived 15 minutes late and made it obvious that he felt he owed me no apology or explanation for this. Indeed, it was too obvious. His silence felt too rehearsed. This was the performance of a man who'd been told by a book that the best strategy was to play confident, to make your date for the evening feel grateful that you'd arrived at all. I could focus on the fact that Gordon from accounts was the sort of guy who believed entirely in a certain sort of book. One where all he had to do was to follow its teachings, and in doing so, he could be transformed into sexy Gordon, the alpha male player who only just happens to be working in accounts. With a polite grin, I've just sat through 90 minutes of sexy Gordon, going through every single contrived conversational trick that the book evangelises. For the purposes of not being the villain on this failed date, I think that's an acceptable amount of politeness on my part. And it's the full player's gospel. The compliments with just enough backhandedness. The insincere attempts at funny self-deprecation. The hints that his approval might just be the confidence boost that I'm looking for. Stick to accurately recounting what Gordon from accounts has actually said tonight, and I think most good folk will think I deserve to keep my unblemished office reputation. Of course, there will be others in the office who will hear all this and will still think that I should not have fled the restaurant unannounced. I probably can't spin this so that they'll actually side with me on this, but I'm not going to give them too much ammunition to paint me as the worst sort of dating villain. If I pay for the whole thing, I'm thinking it's going to create a tiny counterweight of decency to all their snide remarks. And I can hear the more vicious types already. That bitch. She just walked out leaving that dear little lamb Gordon from accounts sobbing in the loo. They'll hiss the first gathering round the water fountain, but then one of the more reasonable office bastards will be compelled by decency to add that, well, although she did pay for all of it, including his meal and all that expensive wine, I mean, that was on her too. The adrenaline is flowing now, and I know I need to get this bill paid quickly. With all that extra energy racing through my brain, I can't stop thinking about all these possible conversations, and then like a mental jolt, there's another reason why I'm paying for the whole meal. Guilt. The nagging sensation that it was me who didn't come out tonight for entirely respectable and honest reasons. You see, the thing is, I knew the moment that I agreed to come out on a date that Gordon from accounts was, well, he's the sort of guy convinced that he's a player. A person inclined to try out all the moves that he's learnt in his precious book. There's a select few of us in the office who already know all about it. And an elite cadre within that select few were able to tell me about his less well-known nickname. There's a few hushed whispers where he's not called Gordon from accounts, but Tripod Gordon. And upon hearing this moniker, I decided that maybe why the hell not? I could put up with an evening of a man's tedious banter if it was true that he was endowed like a well-blessed donkey. And if anyone were to challenge me on my reasoning here, I would point out that I've been having a dreadful time recently on pretty much every front. I could make a strong justification that I deserved a casual night of passion with a sexual Goliath. That was the plan. My selfish reason for flirting with the guy in the office and then saying yes when he asked me out. But it was when I'd been standing awkwardly in the restaurant waiting for his late arrival that I had my first niggle of doubt. If I saw this through to the end, well, imagine what Gordon from accounts would brag about to the whole of accounts on first thing Monday morning. How might the few genuinely cool folk in the office look at me? Look at me as if they were to hear that I jumped into bed with someone using the cheesiest of pick-up routines. When my reputation was being considered by all in the office, its status would be all entangled with talk of Gordon from accounts. Yes, I know, they would say. That Gordon. So over dinner, I did try and stay focused on the mission. I kept reminding myself why I was doing this. Exclusively thinking about the one aspect of Gordon from accounts that had brought me here. Just think about getting through all this and arriving at that part of the evening that is going to be pure animal passion. Well, I can for once get to experience the sort of thing that I read about in tawdry yet effective erotica. But as my date ploughed on through his cheap stratagems, all I could think about was the extent to which I really didn't fancy this person at all. The cons on this deal began to outweigh the one single pro, and I resolved to abort the whole operation. And agreeing to this date was my mistake. Paying for his meal would be a way for me to make up to Gordon from accounts. Compensation for the fact that he'd had to come out tonight while I'd learnt this lesson. So as I try and convince myself at just how right my behaviour is, I could do without the judgmental looks from the head waiter as he makes a rather dramatic play of adding up the bill. He noticeably stares over my shoulder at our full table. I try and smile apologetically, adding a nervous chuckle that I hope says, having to leave this is just one of those things, you've probably seen it dozens of times before. The furrow of his frown deepens, as if to reply, "Mais oui, madame. I do see women do this all the time. And with such behaviour most despicable, I despise each and every one of you all." I handed my card in a manner that I hope conveys the statement, "Well, if that's your attitude, monsieur, I will be glad to be shut of this place as quickly as possible." He mumbles something about the machine not working and disappears to find another. Okay, now I am getting worried. I glance at the door to the gents' toilet for the umpteenth time, and this is not a good time for him to emerge. If he returns to the table now, there is no way that I can credibly deny that I'm leaving. Maybe if I see the door move, I should just leg it. Bill unpaid. Oh, but how will that be seen in the office on Monday morning? Then, a voice seems to break through the restaurant hubbub. "I shouldn't worry about him coming back anytime soon, love." I pause and I look around me. There's no one that seems to be talking to me. Or maybe I'd just heard a completely unrelated conversation. Thing is, he's on his phone in there, see? Started playing some stupid, daft game of his. I still can't see anyone talking to me. Hello? I begin, fearing I must look like a mad woman to anyone watching. When he's playing on that bloody phone, he's dead to the world. How do you think I managed to give him the slip? I hesitate for a moment, unsure that this conversation still relates to me. Who have you slipped away from? I ask. Who do you think, darling? Gordon. I got an inkling earlier that you might be back to Scarpa first chance you get. Got me thinking, that did. Why don't I try and do likewise? The guy's a proper Charlie when you have to deal with him one-to-one like. I laugh. Oh yeah, he's a bit of a dick. There's an awkward pause. And then the voice responds, no need to get personal, love. I'm sorry, I begin. I just... Who are you? There's another pause. And at this, I can hear shuffling noises. And then a slightly muffled voice continues, sorry, darling, just putting into place the final piece of my dead clever escape plan. What did you just ask me? I've stopped caring how mad I look at this point. And I repeat my question loudly this time. A few nearby diners, they look up at the strange woman at the bar, asking nobody in particular who they are. Shh! Cool blimey, keep it down, love, the voice answers. I thought you knew. I got a sense earlier that, maybe we'd made a connection. And I wasn't going to let Gordon ruin this one. I've been carrying that guy for so flipping long. This isn't making any sense. For Pete's sake, woman, I've just climbed into your bleeding handbag. Tentatively, I peer down. And there, struggling between a small packet of tissues and a leather glove is what looks like an enormously impressive penis. Sensing that it's been seen, it coyly waves a testicle in acknowledgement. All right, figured you could smuggle me out of it before Gordon twigs what he's lost. In fact, before anyone has a chance to learn what you're up to. With a sudden start, I realise that the head waiter has returned, bringing with him a working card machine. Hurriedly, I pay for the entire meal and then calmly, I put my purse away, taking care to not upset my new passenger, close my handbag, and with that, we make our escape.